Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a really fascinating blueprint for organizational change. We're zeroing in on how self-awareness, and specifically archetypal alignment, empowers women leaders to completely transform team cultures and drive major success. It's like an incredible toolkit designed to just raise the collective IQ of learning organizations. We're going to unpack how figuring out your own internal compass is literally the non-negotiable first step to shifting an entire system. So, if you lead a team or you're aiming to, stick around because this is absolutely for you.
Well, let's just jump right in. We've got to start with this incredibly powerful quote from Brené Brown that kind of anchors this whole explainer. Quote, "You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worth." Wow, right? It's just this profound reminder that true transformational leadership, especially for women navigating complex, sometimes hyper-political systems, has to begin with owning your personal narrative. You can't effectively lead other people if you're constantly hustling to prove your own worth to the outside world. You literally have to lead from within.
And you know, the author of our source material embodies this beautifully. As a first-generation American born to immigrant parents, she realized super early on that education, it's the ultimate game changer. I mean, picture this. She started out in her early 20s teaching Spanish to 150 students across 6 periods, just trying to figure out how to keep them all engaged. But through sheer grit and this relentless commitment to keep learning, she rose all the way up through the ranks to district leadership, managing over $33 million in resources. Her whole journey proves that meaningful change, it doesn't start with a fancy title. It starts with a deeply held mission and really the willingness to be that catalyst.
So, before we even start looking at how to manage a team, I want you to ask yourself a pretty fundamental question. What stories frame your picture? Think about it. The experiences you've had, the challenges you've overcome, the core values you hold on to. These aren't just background details, you know. They are the actual, solid foundation of your leadership practice. If you want to be a powerful force to be reckoned with, you absolutely must first deeply understand who you are and what exactly drives you to get out of bed every single morning. Speaking of getting out of bed, the Japanese concept of ikigai, which roughly translates to your reason for being, perfectly illustrates how to find that drive. It's that sweet spot right in the center where 4 distinct things intersect: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. For a leader, figuring out your ikigai isn't just some fluffy self-help exercise. Studies actually show it's intimately tied to longevity and happiness. It forms that rock-solid, unshakable inner foundation you're going to need to weather the crazy storms of organizational leadership.
Okay, so once you know your why, you've got to understand your how. Which brings us to our next big question. What archetype frames how you show up? Listen, as a leader, your decisions and your interactions, they aren't random. They're driven by these underlying personas, or what psychiatrist Carl Jung called archetypes. Uncovering these hidden beliefs and personas is exactly what helps leaders understand how to actually motivate and engage their teams.
Enter the Archetype Compass. This is a powerful roadmap used by top business leaders to uncover the universal symbols driving their behavior. It basically divides into distinct motivations. For instance, some archetypes are driven by a deep need to provide structure to the world, while others are just yearning for paradise. Some want to connect deeply with others, and some are determined to leave a massive mark on the world. By locating yourself on this compass, you bring a ton of clarity and predictability to your leadership style, which, bonus, actively boosts your team's morale.
To see this in action, let's look at 4 distinct archetypes and, crucially, their core fears. First, the caregiver, driven to help but absolutely terrified of ingratitude. Then there's the hero, super courageous, driven to succeed but secretly fears vulnerability. We've got the sage, who values knowledge and fears ignorance. And finally, the ruler, who seeks to create a prosperous environment but is basically terrified of chaos. Now, every single archetype has its strengths and its blind spots. As a woman leader, knowing your archetype allows you to double down on your strengths and strategically mitigate those blind spots long before you ever step foot into a team meeting.
Let's look at what happens when these leadership styles totally clash, using a real-world scenario from our source material. On one side, we have Teresa Donner. She's a passionate, data-driven systems leader trying to innovate for multilingual learners. On the other side, her boss, Mr. Jennings. Now, Mr. Jennings talked a really good game about equity, but his actions? Completely micromanaging and controlling. He basically lacked trust in his own judgment. And because of that, he strung Teresa along, shut down her projects, and created this incredibly toxic emotional roller coaster. This contrast hits the nail on the head. A leader's internal dysfunction can absolutely paralyze an entire team's progress.
So, how do we avoid becoming a Mr. Jennings and instead build a team that actually thrives? Well, that brings us to Harvard professor Teresa Almabila's progress principle.
The crucial takeaway here is this. The absolute most important factor for a worker's motivation and creativity isn't pressure. It isn't fear of failure. It's the sense of making meaningful progress in their work. When employees feel like they're actually making headway, even if it's just through small wins, their inner work life flourishes, and productivity just absolutely skyrockets.
Building on that progress principle, here are 3 actionable steps every leader absolutely must take. First up, act as a catalyst. Give your team crystal clear goals and the actual autonomy to solve problems. Second, act as a nourisher. Uplift your people personally. Recognize them and build real, meaningful relationships. And third, protect the environment. This one is huge because Amabile's research found that negative setbacks are actually 2 to 3 times more potent than positive progress events. No way, right? It's true. You have to aggressively protect your team's inner work life from toxic distractions.
And you know, this whole idea aligns perfectly with Jim Collins' concepts from his book, Good to Great. Building a tribe is really all about aligned goals and fostering real connections. Collins talks about level 5 leadership, which is this wild mix of personal humility combined with an indomitable will, and the principle of first who, then what. Basically, before you even figure out where to drive the bus, you have to get the right people on the bus. You need to hire and sometimes, fire based on your core values to ensure you're building a culture of discipline, meritocracy, and mutual respect.
Now, scaling up from the team level to the macro organization, we can map this whole thing onto the organizational life cycle. Think of it in 3 stages. If your system is in the birth phase, people are super optimistic but kind of unfocused, right? So you need an agile team to operationalize that vision. If you're in growth, trust is high, and your job is to build the systems to accelerate that growth. But if your organization is in decline, where the culture is toxic, reactive, and just full of blame, the leadership move requires immense strength. You have to create this fierce urgency, analyze the hard data, and just completely reshape the culture from the ground up. Navigating those different stages requires a completely unbreakable set of core values. For a woman leader driving real systemic change, there are 4 that are just paramount. First, you've got to embrace change management. That means getting right down in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder with your team. Second, maintain a relentless focus on results. Third, and I cannot stress this enough, you must align your say and your do. Literally, the only words that matter are the ones backed up by your budget and your actions. And finally, equity. The work has to intentionally change the trajectory for marginalized and diverse learners.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen how knowing your story, understanding your archetype, and mastering the progress principle can help you build a totally unstoppable team. The tools are all right here. The blueprint is laid out for us. But the transformation doesn't just happen on its own. It requires really deliberate action and the courage to fully own your narrative. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. Are you ready to step up and become the catalyst that actively shifts the culture in your organization?